The question of what is and isn't art has been on the minds of humans for thousands of years, but it's only in the last few centuries when it has been widely considered more than a traditional painting, musical piece, or sonnet. When focusing on the last 100 years, we see trends that have not been seen so widely in previous centuries. Art, at least to our own standards, becomes far more provocative. In 2017, this painting of a white stripe sold for over $43 million. The following year, a famous anonymous artist shredded his own painting after it was sold at auction for nearly $2 million. In 2032, a man live streamed his whole life, 24 hours a day for a year, and ended up making $600,000 in donations. The next decade, a woman with perfect vision replaced her eyes with onions. And only 15 years ago, a man from Florida trained a pair of alligators to paint this piece. Peter has attempted to destroy the painting with high-powered lasers on multiple occasions, but to no avail. The 21st century also saw a rise in abstract imagery. This painting, titled Absolute Devastation, is described by the artist to be the essence of several darker forces overwhelming the light. Scholars are not sure what is meant by this description. However, one of the more popular interpretations is that it personifies the political environment of the time, where the emergence of algorithm-fueled echo chambers were able to inadvertently radicalize otherwise moderate-leaning members of society. However, as for the real meaning, we may never be sure. This kind of mystery is unfortunately quite common for early works of the 21st century, as the destruction during the Disney War of the 2070s wiped out an estimated 10% of the internet records dating before 2029. However, thanks to sophisticated artificial intelligence reconstruction, we are able to still enjoy early works such as Pepper the Frog, Poleface, and an abstract piece called Moss, which sold at auction for $7 billion only last year. Something that early humans of the 21st century were completely unaware of was that they were living through a renaissance of religious art. In fact, the fastest growing religion today, the Gospel of Shrek, already had many interpretations by the early 2020s, but it was only in the mid-2060s when scholars were able to widely agree that Stephen Carl was indeed the second coming of Christ. May he forever be number one. Television and film at the start of the 21st century saw an explosion of innovation and inventiveness, spurred on by business models becoming predominantly subscription-based. The drive for competition fueling television and film allowed productions to be more creative and bold, where previously long-standing studios would deem these efforts to be too risky. With this being said, even for the most part, this revolution in film and television could not escape the lazy story cliches that had plagued preceding productions. In 2048, the International Film Association excluded media entertainment from receiving awards if they included any of the following: base an entire storyline on a misunderstanding, reveal that the love interest was in front of them the whole time, have the protagonist turn on the news at just the right moment, have a character smash through glass without a scratch, draw any amount of blood from the palm of one's hand, trigger mic feedback to show an uncomfortable speaker, or say the lines, "I didn't sign up for this. I'm probably dead by the time you're reading this." And, "I can explain," after leaving the protagonist in a situation unable to convey their justified predicament. Much like how westerns were popular in the 1950s, the 2020s craze for superheroes seemed insatiable, and the undisputed owner of the lion's share of this trend was Disney-owned Marvel. The early Iron Man suits would later go on to become secretly developed and mass-produced before the Disney War broke out, having easily been funded by the impressive revenue generation of the franchise. Traditional television and film consumption has remained largely the same from this time, as most consumers found the hyper-immersive virtual reality experiences to be too fatiguing for extended periods. These types of more intensive experiences did, however, transform the cinema experience, which at the time was in steep decline, until the widespread VR transition in the early 2030s.
In a recent article, Time magazine put down pop music, and they referred to Day Tripper as being about a prostitute, and Norwegian Wood as being about a lesbian. Now, I just wanted to know what your intent was when you wrote it, and what your feeling is about the Time magazine criticism of the music that is being written today.
Well, you're just trying to write songs about prostitutes and lesbians, that's all.
Out of all the artistic industries, none seem to have changed more than that of music. The early parts of the century saw a number of new emerging genres. Dubstep reached its peak in 2011, followed by tubstep in 2026, then finally pubstep, which only seemed to be popular in the UK. With the invention of music streaming, the business model of the music industry quickly flipped, from artists going on tour to promote a record, to records being made as the reason for another tour. Despite this dramatic new emphasis on live entertainment, most primary sources, from people who tried to buy tickets to such shows, indicate the experience to be equally as unpleasant as gargling nails. Music streaming also allowed algorithms to learn the music taste of an individual incredibly quickly and accurately, which saw users pushed toward songs they would be more likely to enjoy. Naturally, by the early 2040s, AI learning was now intelligent enough to not only find out what a person liked, but to create songs from scratch, specifically tailored to a single individual. Although, for the first 4 years, the algorithm mostly just provided remixes of the undisputed best song of the century, especially after every member of Smash Mouth were made saints in the Gospel of Shrek. The question of whether video games as a medium should be considered art was on the lips of many in the early 21st century. However, the argument eventually boiled down to the phrase, "Why not? We already consider this shit art." Commercially, video games quickly became the most profitable art form in the early 21st century, and in the early 2030s, publisher monetization hurt the medium to such an extent that video games were widely seen more like casinos than a sculpture or a creative melody. The straw in the camel's back wasn't that Battlefield 12 made players purchase ammunition with premium currency, or even that FIFA 2032 required a dedicated console to play. In the end, it was a small change to Candy Crush that US President Karen Miller put at the forefront of her term in office. President Karen, as we are all aware, sparked the long-standing hatred of most South American countries after she developed a reputation for asking the highest-ranked members of public office to whether she could talk to their manager. As we now understand, this was the first in a long line of offenses by the United States, which would eventually lead to the Great Disney War of the 2070s. Women's fashion at the start of the new millennia was widely regarded as only slightly more practical than was available 100 years before, as most garments weren't equipped to carry essential items, such as cellular devices or emergency Vegemite. Men's fashion, on the other hand, started with a very functional style of deep pockets and practical zippers, but a slump in the fashion industry in the mid-2040s pushed bag accessories toward the previously untapped male market. It's unclear what kind of direction photographers gave models at the time, but by analyzing millions of photos of the period, sophisticated artificial intelligence believes that male models were told the following before each shoot.
Pretend you've just had a bad day at school and you've just come home to play Minecraft. 20 minutes later and you're halfway through building a complicated redstone contraption before your mother walks in and tells you to let your younger brother play. Now give me the look. Oh, perfect, wonderful, I love your energy. Seduce the camera, seduce it, impregnate this fucking camera. Do it!
Similarly, the line for women was,
"The co-worker you're not particularly fond of just got fired and is currently defecating on your boss's car. Good, I like it, yes, I like that one. I'm loving your energy, Susan, well done. I think that's a gold star for you today.
Another interesting phenomenon over the last century has been fashion brands merging to stay more competitive. Forever 21 and Hugo Boss merged to become Level 21 Boss. Nautica became a subsidiary of Nike, now called Subnautica. 24 and Jack Wolfskin became a trap for YouTube demonetization. And Adidas, for the most part, generated most of its revenue from Eastern Bloc military contracts. Early 21st century dancing seemed to evolve from anything with baggy clothes to anything from a video game, and by the start of the 2030s, something called the Scottish man step. Here's the only archive footage still available today. Dancing, as an art form at this time, was still mainly used by gentlemen to initiate a copulating ritual, and although experts estimate it only had a success rate of about 1%, this didn't stop some truly gallant attempts by ambitious dumbshits. The abundance of footage for this kind of artistic pursuit was incredibly well archived by the 2040s hit TV show, Nice Try Bro.
Dancing in the streets like no one's watching, trying to get the girl but failing. Nice try, bro.
Fuck, that was an expensive 15 seconds. There are of course thousands of art forms we didn't cover in today's lecture, but it's the year 2100. You guys don't have the attention span for that shit. Anyway, here's some classical music that people of the time called an absolute fucking banger.
Well, the years start coming and they don't stop coming. Fed to the rules and they hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart but your head gets dumb.
So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back streets? You'll never know if you don't go.
You'll never shine if you don't